Hello, this is Yitzi Elmkies again here presenting an insight into Parashat Behar based upon the fundamental teachings of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. Rashi famously opens up in this week's parasha and tells us that just like all the mitzvahs are given on Har Sinai, so also Shemitah was given. What is the need to single out Shemitah? That's the age-old question. And another question that appears and springs to mind is that Rashi doesn't point out the blatantly obvious. Why is it that he's reminding us that all the mitzvahs are given on Har Sinai? So in order to understand what are mitzvot are essentially a base of rules, a structure, a diagram, if you want, of habits and rituals. But it sounds too antiquated when we look at it like that. Really, the main point of mitzvot is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to shine himself down in this world, and the mitzvah is like an encasing. The famous pasuk says, "V'ner mitzvot Torah." The ner is the candle is a mitzvah, and the Torah is the light, which means that the ner is only a holdall. It's holding it. It's holding a mitzvah, and the Torah is the light. So you might say for me, what's the ikar? Is the Torah or is it the mitzvah? So the Torah, 100% is the or. It's going to give us all the light. It's going to give us all the bountiful providence that we're going to be able to receive from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in order to go and get close to Him. And there's nothing greater when you open up the Torah. You feel you're embalmed by all the kedusha that surrounds you, all the ideas. It's Mamash Hashem's mindset opening up in your front room, or in shul wherever you're sitting. Hashem becomes part of you. He's with you. But the ner, if anything, it's only a candle. It's a holder. It's only holding lights. It's not so great. And the answer is that without doing the mitzvot, then the Torah itself is just going to be nothing more than a manual exercise. And therefore, the reason why the Torah feels so good is because it knows that the candle, it's holding it, is eventually going to get less and less and less. And that's why the ner mitzvah is the idea that the mitzvah on us wears us down, wears our ego down, and it just makes us less and less and less until we're able to go and find Hashem. And therefore, the ner is not just such an idea as being a mere holdall. It's actually doing more than that. It's telling us that the whole role we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is so special that when we do a mitzvah, this is the way we actually discover Hashem's chesed through the Torah in this world. It's not just the idea of learning the Torah. It's that the whole point of why we're able to do the mitzvah properly is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is signposting to us how to get close. It's a direction map, how to get close to Him using the mitzvah of the Torah, which is the ultimate chesed. So now that we understand that the Torah itself is marginalized into the mitzvah, we now have a better understanding of why is it that Shemitah is going to be juxtaposed to all the mitzvot. Shemitah has its literal translation as falling away, slipping away. You have to let the land lie fallow for a whole year. Now, the two ways of understanding it, Shemitah is the pinnacle of completely putting yourself aside, letting yourself slip away to Hashem, just complete bittul. There's nothing else, it's just Hashem. But there's also, unfortunately, derogatory way of understanding Shemitah, which is, Shemitah, I'm falling away, I'm slipping away, I don't feel with Hashem, I don't feel the chesed. The chesed of Hashem is there with me. I don't feel the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking out for me. And the person can go into this mindset that he doesn't really feel connected anymore with Hashem, Chalila. So on that level, on Shemitah, there's a Mishnah in Makot. The Gemara Makot says there, Nishmat HaBarzel, where the iron had slipped off. And it depends how it slipped off. If it slipped off downwards, when you're doing a downward action, then you go straight to Galut, right? You killed someone accidentally, go to Galut. But if you slipped off the iron head in an upward motion, then you're Chayv Mita, you're killed. So there's two dinim here. The person, when he is so brazen, he doesn't have any care for fellow Yidden, doesn't have care for anyone's society, it doesn't make a difference to him, he feels he's the only one around, and Derech Aliyah, I can go up and up and up, and whoever I heard in the way doesn't make a difference. It's Chayv Mita. That person doesn't have a place in society. But Derech Yerida, if a person goes and does something in a way that he doesn't have that brazen attitude, but he gets into a point where he's so upset, where he doesn't even consider anyone else anymore. It's not so much doing it on purpose. It's not so much that he's brazen, but he's lost almost like the will to live. He's lost the will to have, an accepted energy level that a person needs to have in order to function. So in a way, obviously, from the dinim point of view, Chayv Misa is the worst, right? God says you still get to live, but you're just going to have to go to the Ari Miklat in the city of refuge. But in a way, the din of Galut, of going to Ari Miklat, is perhaps worse than the one who's Chayv Mita. The one who's Chayv Mita, he's got energy, he's got chayat, but he just doesn't care about anyone. So in terms of living, he'll still live in the next world, and his punishment, his atonement will be to die here. But that still means because he died here, that's it. He's been tried, and up there he'll have a different life. But somebody who carries on in this world, but he hasn't been plucked, he hasn't been plucked from the world. Hashem didn't take him. But the point is, he's just going to travel around in a limbo. He's going to have to go to Ari Miklat. He's going to have to live almost like a pretend life. He's going to live a real life, but he's within four walls. He can't go out. That's going to be his life until the Kohen Gadol dies. So in a sense, yes, he's still alive. Yes, he's still part of Olam Hazeh. But in a sense, he's in some sort of tohu. He's in some sort of wandering, abstract world. And that's because the way he drew himself away from society, the way he wasn't thinking when he did something, then he let himself slip. He let himself go into a recess of his own self. And for that reason, there is no greater galus than that. The galus of the mind is very, very deep, and it's very traumatic for people who aren't able to go and grasp onto life with proper chayot. And in the end, it's almost like they're giving up. So are you going to die? You're not going to die, but in a sense, you're going to die even more. You're going to have a worse death because you're not even going to be aware how beautiful life really is. And that really is the greatest death. And so if one is to look deeper into the concept of Shemitah, the Midrash Rabbah points out a very interesting ideal. He says there that Shemitah, you can always work out when Shemitah year is coming up, as long as it's divisible by 7, right? But if it's not divisible by 7, then it can't be a Shemitah year. And I think the Lashon there he mentions is that there's an excess, there's shiraim, there's something left over. The idea, certainly in Chassidut and in Breslov thought, is that every Talmud should be yearning and the whole time looking for a Kodesh Baruch Hu. But it's very hard when a person is looking for Hashem on his own, because when a person looks for a Kodesh Baruch Hu and he doesn't really know what he's looking for, and he thinks he knows what he's looking for, but he doesn't, then it makes his job even harder. And that's why when one is attached to a super tzaddik, someone who's already trod that path, he's been through that journey, and he's able to help you, not do it for you, but he's able to help you to get to that pinnacle, to that peak of your own potential, and your own neshama's yearnings, then that is a far, far more rewarding level than somebody who's just going to try and do it on his own. And for that reason, therefore, in order to get to that level where he can start really appreciating the greatness of the Rebbeinu Shalom, then he needs to be miskasher to that tzaddik that's able to bring him there, which is the idea of having to nullify oneself. And the ego is the hardest thing to nullify. As we know, the yeshut, the idea of something being constantly trying to pull him back and tell him that, no, this is really the way you should be. You've got your own personality, you have your own drive, you have your own set of skills, so therefore you should use everything you've got and use it to the maximum. And of course, no one's going to deny that's true. A person has to use his skills, he has to use the ability that he has. But if it's solely based on him and nothing else, then it's almost like he's one on his own. He's not part of a greater society. And that's the idea when a person can do something which is derech aliyah. He can be taking the axe head, but nishmat barzel, it's slipping off. He doesn't even realize that he's not really with everyone else. He just thinks he's with everybody else. And the problem is that when a person is so much on his own, then however great his talents are, and I'm sure there's, they are inestimable how great this person's talents can be. But the point is when they get to such a crescendo where he is not even able to see anything apart from his own self, then that can't be a way to get to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, that's why when he's mevatel himself, when a yid takes all his talents, takes all his skills, says, you know what, however great I am, but there is somebody greater, then I'm able to be mevatel to that greater power. Therefore, when he entrusts himself to a tzaddik, that's a real Talmud. Because he knows that however great he is, he still needs that extra push, he still needs that extra surge that can only be given by someone who's in a stronger position than himself. And that's the idea of Shemitah. Shemitah, therefore, his idea is to let one fall away into a tzaddik. It doesn't mean he's going to give up. It doesn't mean he's going to, recess into his own shell and he's not going to bother. It means quite the opposite. Because he's got such a powerful source, he wants to do more because that source is going to drag him on even more and even more. The person's like in a tunnel and you can see a little bit of light. He'll keep running. He'll run much faster than he would have done had he not been able to see that light, because he now sees there's hope. He now sees there's something that's dragging him along and drawing him to an eventual end. So that's the idea of the tzaddik. The tzaddik already has experienced all the journeys that he needed to do in order to reach that point where Hashem wanted him to get to, and therefore he's able to now pull everybody along that trajectory in the same manner that they'll be able to also experience Hashem according to their own level. So therefore, when a person is Shemitah, when a person literally falls away into the tzaddik, therefore he lets himself go. And that's why the Midrash is saying, if there's anything left over, it can't be Shemitah. And that's the idea of the ego, that when a Talmud is trying to mevatel himself to his Rebbe, if there's anything left over of himself, it's going to conflict. You can't just say, I'm going to try and squeeze myself into the tzaddik. It means that, no, you have to completely self-surrender whatever you are, however great you are, and use those skills 100%. But then there has to be a point where you say, no, but I need to use those skills and everything I've got and realize that I haven't really got anything compared to what the tzaddik has, and therefore that letting go is Shemitah. And by doing that, then you can understand why is it comparable to all the mitzvahs on Har Sinai. Because the whole point, as we said at the beginning, the mitzvot given on Har Sinai are only a chesed. They're only a kindness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to draw us near to Him by us realizing that whatever the light of the Torah is in us, and a lot of us, we aspire, we want to learn as much as we can. The achievements that we do manage to get in Limud are incredibly a massive achievement. But at the same time, we have to realize that however much the achievement of the Or is sitting within us, we have to realize that it's only there in order to bring out the performance of that understanding. And to have the performance of that understanding, we have to do mitzvot. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us that is the chesed He's doing with us. He's saying that it's not enough just to keep it in there. It's not enough just to go and have the Torah and understand what you're doing and learning it, but you also have to use all that closeness of the Torah that we're learning the whole time analytically, and then we have to convert it into a performance, into these other deeds that we're doing, which are the mitzvot. And therefore, that is the highest chesed one can do, is to take something which is quite... on a logical level, it's more like on a skill level, and then take all those things that you've learned and then actually apply them practically. And when you're applying it practically, you're actually doing the learning at the same time. That's an amazing chesed, because normally you might say, look, say the marshal person studying law, he's studying a doctorate, wants to become a doctor, let's say, right? That's a typical example of a person who's engaged in studying for such a long period of time. When he's actually in the doctor's surgery, he's not thinking back, I remember doing this exam in the third semester, whatever. He's not thinking like that, right? But the whole greatness is that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us the Torah, even though that when we're doing a mitzvah, we're not actually learning, we're still learning. That's why the Torah is called Torah Chesed. The Chesed is that the mitzvahs that we're doing still imbibe the Torah at the very same time. So it's not like that analogy we just gave, that once he's sitting in the doctor's chair, I don't care about the exam I did 10 years ago. It's not relevant. Now I'm in the chair, I'm making the decisions. And I'm sure it's based upon the skills that he knows and some things that he covered. But at the end of the day, he's more following a system. It's not like he's drawing back on the old information and the old studies that he learned. But the greatness when it comes to us, when it comes to Torah, that even when you're not learning Torah, you're doing the mitzvot. So, so you're going to be shaking the lulav. You're not thinking about the whole Gemara sukkah that you're learning when you are learning about how to shake the lulav. But whilst you're shaking the lulav, then automatically that Torah is going inside it, and it's actually creating that mitzvah, and it's making that mitzvah even greater, even though you're not actually learning at that point. That's the chesed Hashem's doing. And therefore, if you think about it, if a person is able to let himself completely slip away into the tzaddik, which means that he's self-surrendering everything that he knows, even though he thinks it's a loss, then in the same way you might think, well, hold on a minute, I'm shaking the lulav now, it's a loss. I'm not in the learning of it. This is much simpler. No, it's actually, you're getting a double deal. You're getting better. You're getting more because you are doing the action and doing the performance, and the performance involves the Torah in it at the same time. So whatever you've learned has gone into the mitzvah, and you're getting double. So therefore, the more so, when you actually attribute all the ability that you have into a tzaddik, that tzaddik therefore is giving you all the impetus that he's got into you. And if you might think, well, I'm losing out because I'm not giving what I can do, no, you're giving yourself whatever you've got, plus whatever the tzaddik has already got for you. Therefore, you're making a merger. You're merging yourself, but you're saying at the same time, even whatever I've got is not so important. It's only what he's got. And therefore, at the same time you're doing that, you're actually going to get all the levels of the tzaddik from what he's already performing for you inside you at the same time. So in the end, it's the same thing. You can't lose out. You're going to get double. And that's why the idea of the Shemitah is therefore synonymous with Har Sinai. Because, as we said, although the Torah is so amazingly great at the time you're doing mitzvah, you might think the Torah is not there, but really that's the Torah Chesed. The kindness of Hashem is that He allows the Torah to be there in the mitzvah at the very same time. And therefore, the same idea is that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu selected a great tzaddik like Moshe Rabbeinu, that the only way you can really understand what the mitzvahs are is when you're attached to him. Therefore, the very attachment to the tzaddik means that you've not only got the Torah that you've learned, you've not only got the mitzvahs that you're doing, which also include the Torah you've learned, but now you've got the entire essence of why you're learning the Torah, of why you're doing the mitzvah, which is to be attached to the tzaddik who's reached that perfect level of attachment to Hashem. And you're going to get all of that just by letting yourself slip away. So therefore, if you think about it, there isn't a better deal you can get. That really is the ultimate. But although it's very, you might say, so easy to get, the Yetzer Hara will tell you all the reasons why it's not really important, and in fact it's not true, and it's counterproductive because you're going to be losing out. But the only way to think about it is, like we said, if you're not thinking about that when you shake a lulav, if you're not thinking, I'm losing out now because I'm only doing a performance, I'm not doing a learning, there we say that everything comes together. So also here, the whole reason why it's coming all together is because the Torah is etched inside the neshamas of the tzaddikim, of our holy teachers. Because without our teachers, how could we have ever got these mitzvot? How could we understand the Torah? So therefore, it must be that all these things, the mitzvot and the Torah and the performance and the learning thereof, must be imbibed together inside that higher soul. And therefore, once we attach ourselves to that higher soul, we're getting the Torah plus the mitzvah, but we're getting the ultimate attachment that the tzaddik has already managed to go and achieve. And therefore, we're going along in that ride with him. And with that idea, that everybody therefore should have an improved experience, having heard this, of what it is to go and be able to serve Hashem and be attached to Him through the powers and through the teachings of the holy tzaddikim.